There are places on Earth that feel untouched by time, where the land itself seems to challenge the very limits of life. In Ethiopia, existence clings to jagged cliffs, arid plains, and ancient stone, yet its people rise above it all with a resilience carved through centuries. Welcome to a land where humanity first found its voice. A nation that stood unbroken through history, guarding its soul against conquest. Geography, a land forged by extremes. To understand Ethiopia is to first understand its land, because here, geography is not just a backdrop. It is the architect of life belief and survival. Stretching across the Horn of Africa, Ethiopia is a country without a coastline, yet it rises higher than most of the continent. The Ethiopian highlands dominate the landscape often called the Roof of Africa, where vast plateaus and jagged peaks cut across the sky. These highlands are not gentle. They are fractured, dramatic, and deeply carved by time, forming valleys and escarpments so steep they seem to split the earth itself apart. For millions, these elevations are home-shaping agriculture, isolating communities, and preserving traditions that have remained untouched for centuries. But Ethiopia is a land of contrast, and nowhere is that contrast more striking than in the Danakil Depression. Located in the northeastern corner of the country, the Danakil Depression is one of the lowest and hottest places on Earth, sitting more than 100 meters below sea level. Temperatures here regularly soar above 45 degrees Celsius, and the landscape feels almost alien, a vast expanse of salt flats, acidic springs, and sulfur fields, painted in vivid yellows, greens, and oranges. Beneath it all, the Earth is still pulling itself apart. This is one of the few places on the planet where three tectonic plates meet, slowly drifting away from each other in a process that over millions of years may create a new ocean. And yet even here, life persists. The Afar people have lived in this harsh environment for generations, extracting salt by hand and transporting it across the desert much as their ancestors did centuries ago. In a place that appears utterly uninhabitable, they endure a quiet testament to human adaptability. To the north, the Simien Mountains rise in sharp defiance of gravity. Often compared to a natural fortress, these mountains are defined by sheer cliffs that plunge thousands of meters into the valleys below. Mornings here are wrapped in mist, and as the clouds lift, a landscape of staggering beauty reveals itself. It is within this rugged terrain that some of Ethiopia's most unique wildlife survives. The Gelada baboon, found nowhere else on Earth, roams these highlands in large, complex social groups, grazing like herds across the cliffs. Nearby, the Ethiopian wolf, one of the rarest canids in the world, hunts in silence across alpine meadows. Further east, the ground itself breathes fire. The Erta Ile volcano, one of the few continuously active lava lakes on Earth, glows in the darkness, a reminder that Ethiopia sits atop one of the most geologically active regions on the planet. Here, the boundary between creation and destruction is thin, constantly shifting beneath the surface. What makes Ethiopia truly remarkable is not just the presence of these extremes, but their proximity. Within a single country, one can travel from cool, fertile highlands to one of the most inhospitable environments on Earth. From lush valleys that sustain ancient farming communities to barren deserts where survival depends on endurance alone. This geography does more than define the land, it defines the people. Isolation created by mountains has preserved languages, cultures, and identities across generations. Harsh climates have demanded resilience, shaping communities that are deeply connected to both land and tradition. In Ethiopia, nature is not something to be conquered. It is something to be understood, respected, and endured. And perhaps that is why places like Abuna Yamata Church exist at all, not in spite of the landscape, but because of it. History, a civilization that refused to break. In a land shaped by extremes, it is perhaps no surprise that Ethiopia's history carries the same intensity, ancient, resilient, and fiercely independent. Long before much of the world had taken form as we know it today, Ethiopia was already a center of civilization. The roots of its story stretch back thousands of years to the powerful kingdom of Aksum, one of the great empires of the ancient world. Rising around the 1st century CE, Aksum stood as a dominant trading power connecting Africa to the Middle East and beyond. Ivory, gold, and spices flowed through its networks, while towering stone obelisks, some of the largest ever constructed, were carved into the sky as symbols of strength and permanence. But Aksum's legacy was not only economic or architectural. It was spiritual. Ethiopia became one of the earliest nations in the world to adopt Christianity, doing so in the 4th century. This early conversion would shape the nation's identity in ways that still echo today in its rituals, its art, and its deeply rooted sense of continuity with the past. As centuries passed, empires rose and fell, but Ethiopia endured. What sets Ethiopia apart from nearly every other nation on the African continent is a simple yet extraordinary truth: it was never fully colonized. While European powers carved Africa into territories during the 19th century, Ethiopia stood as an exception, a nation that resisted. That resistance reached its defining moment in 1896 during the Battle of Adwa. Facing a modern European army, Ethiopian forces under Emperor Menelik II achieved a decisive and historic victory against Italy. It was more than a military triumph. It was a statement to Africa and to the world that colonization was not inevitable. The victory at Adwa became a symbol of pride, not only for Ethiopia, but for oppressed peoples across the continent. There was, however, a brief interruption. In 1936, Italy returned under Mussolini and occupied Ethiopia for 5 years. Yet even then, the occupation was met with relentless resistance. By 1941, Ethiopia had reclaimed its sovereignty, reinforcing a national identity built not on submission, but on defiance. Beyond battles and empires, Ethiopia's history is also written in quieter, more enduring ways through its language, its timekeeping, and its worldview. Unlike most countries, Ethiopia follows its own calendar, rooted in ancient traditions and differing by about 7 to 8 years from the Gregorian calendar used elsewhere. Time itself is measured differently. The Ethiopian clock begins at sunrise, where what the rest of the world calls 6 a.m. becomes 12 o'clock. It is a subtle but powerful reflection of a society that has evolved on its own terms, not simply inherited systems from outside. Even its written script, Ge'ez, stands as a testament to continuity. Still used in religious texts and liturgy, it connects modern Ethiopia to its ancient past in a way few civilizations have maintained so seamlessly. History here is not confined to museums or ruins. It lives in the rhythm of daily life, in the language spoken, in the rituals observed, and in the collective memory of a people who have never forgotten who they are. And just as the mountains once shielded communities from outside forces, they also helped preserve something even more valuable: identity. Because in Ethiopia, history is not just something that happened, it is something that still breathes. Faith and spiritual life, where belief defies gravity. If history in Ethiopia still breathes, then faith is the force that gives it life. Here, belief is not confined to sacred texts or quiet prayer. It is carved into mountains, painted onto stone, and lived through rituals that have remained unchanged for centuries. In Ethiopia, spirituality is not separate from the land, it is embedded within it, rising from the same cliffs and valleys that have shaped the nation's identity. At the heart of this spiritual world stands the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, one of the oldest Christian traditions on earth. Its origins trace back to the 4th century, and unlike many other branches of Christianity, it has preserved a form of worship that feels strikingly close to its ancient roots. Services are conducted in Ge'ez, a liturgical language long removed from daily speech, yet still understood in the context of faith. The result is something timeless, a living bridge between past and present. But Ethiopia does not simply preserve belief. It tests it. Few places capture this more vividly than Abuna Yamata Gu. Perched high within a sheer rock face in the Tigray region, this church is not accessible by road nor by any conventional path. To reach it, one must climb scaling vertical stone walls, navigating narrow ledges, and trusting both balance and courage with every step. There are no safety ropes, no modern reinforcements. Only the rock, the height, and the will to continue. And yet, for centuries, people have made this journey. Inside, the reward is not just the view, but the experience itself. The walls are covered in ancient frescoes, vivid depictions of saints and apostles preserved in remarkable condition. The air feels still almost suspended, as if time itself slows within these stone chambers. It is not simply a place of worship. It is a statement that faith here demands effort. That devotion is proven not through words, but through action. Further south, another marvel rises, one that seems less like it was built and more like it was revealed. In the town of Lalibela, a network of 11 churches has been carved directly into the earth. These structures are not constructed in the traditional sense. Instead, they were hewn downward from solid rock, creating entire buildings hidden below ground level. From above, they appear almost invisible crosses etched into the surface of the earth itself. These churches, dating back to the 12th century, were designed to serve as a New Jerusalem, a sacred destination for pilgrims unable to travel to the Holy Land. Today, they remain active places of worship where priests chant, incense fills the air, and barefoot pilgrims move through narrow passageways carved centuries ago. Faith in Ethiopia is also expressed through movement, through festivals that transform entire cities into living ceremonies. Among the most significant is Timkat, the celebration of Epiphany. During this festival, thousands gather dressed in white, moving in processions that blend joy, reverence, and unity. Priests carry replicas of the Ark of the Covenant, known as tablets, through the streets, accompanied by chanting, music, and ritual. At its climax, water is blessed and shared among the people, a symbolic act of renewal that connects the individual to something far greater. What makes Ethiopian spirituality so powerful is not just its age, but its continuity. In many parts of the world, tradition fades as modernity advances. But here the two exist side by side. Ancient rituals are not relics, they are routine. Faith is not occasional, it is constant. And perhaps most striking of all, it is deeply personal. Because in Ethiopia, belief is not something you inherit passively. It is something you climb for. People and culture, a mosaic of identity. If faith defines the spirit of Ethiopia, then its people give that spirit form diverse, layered, and deeply rooted in identity. Ethiopia is not a single culture nor a single story. It is a mosaic of more than 80 ethnic groups, each with its own language, traditions, and worldview. From the highland Amhara and Tigray communities to the Oromo, the largest ethnic group in the country, identity here is local before it is national. Language alone reflects this diversity, with over 70 languages spoken, many belonging to entirely different linguistic families. Yet, despite these differences, there is a shared cultural rhythm, one that binds the country together through tradition, respect, and community. Nowhere is this diversity more visually striking than in the Omo Valley in southern Ethiopia. Here, culture is not just preserved, it is lived visibly and unapologetically. Among groups like the Mursi and Hamar, the human body becomes a canvas of identity. Scarification, body painting, and adornments are not merely aesthetic choices, they are markers of status, beauty, and belonging. In the case of Mursi women, the insertion of clay lip plates is a cultural practice that signifies maturity and social standing, a tradition that, while often misunderstood by outsiders, carries deep meaning within the community. But Ethiopian culture is not only found in its most remote regions. It is equally present in everyday life in the way people gather, eat, and interact. Hospitality is a defining trait. Guests are not simply welcomed, they are honored. This is perhaps best experienced through the Ethiopian coffee ceremony, a ritual that transforms a simple drink into a social and almost spiritual event. Coffee beans are roasted by hand ground and brewed in a traditional clay pot known as a jabina. The process is slow, deliberate, and communal, often lasting over an hour. Conversations unfold, relationships are strengthened, and time itself seems to pause. This sense of togetherness extends to food. Meals are shared from a single large platter with injera, a soft, sour flatbread, serving as both plate and utensil. Eating is not an individual act, but a collective one. There is even a tradition known as gursha, where one person feeds another by hand, a gesture of trust, affection, and social bonding. Clothing, too, reflects a blend of identity and continuity. Traditional garments like the white cotton habesha chemise, often embroidered with intricate patterns, are still worn during festivals and special occasions. These designs are not random, they often indicate region heritage and even personal history. What makes Ethiopian culture particularly remarkable is its resilience. In a rapidly globalizing world where many traditional practices fade under external influence, Ethiopia has maintained a strong cultural core. Modern influences are present especially in cities like Addis Ababa, but they rarely replace tradition. Instead, they exist alongside it. This coexistence is not always seamless, but it is real. Because in Ethiopia, identity is not something that evolves by forgetting the past. It evolves by carrying it forward. Daily life, living in a different rhythm. To step into daily life in Ethiopia is to step into a different sense of time, one that does not follow the world, but moves to its own rhythm. Here even the clock tells a different story. Unlike the standard system used globally, Ethiopia measures time beginning at sunrise. What the rest of the world calls 6 a.m. is considered 12 o'clock in Ethiopia. The day starts with light, not numbers, a system rooted in practicality shaped by agrarian life where daylight defines productivity. It is a subtle shift, but one that reflects a deeper truth. Life here is guided less by abstraction and more by nature itself. This connection to the land is most visible in rural Ethiopia, where the majority of the population still lives. Agriculture is not just an occupation, it is the backbone of existence. Farmers cultivate crops like teff, a tiny grain used to make injera on terraced highlands that have been worked for generations. The methods are often traditional, relying on rainfall manual labor and inherited knowledge rather than mechanized systems. In these communities, life is structured around cycles, planting, harvesting, and seasons that dictate both survival and routine. Yet daily life is not defined by hardship alone. It is also shaped by strong social bonds. In both rural villages and urban neighborhoods, community plays a central role. People gather frequently not out of necessity but out of habit. Conversations are unhurried, relationships are prioritized, and time is often shared rather than spent. The Ethiopian coffee ceremony, repeated daily in many households, is one of the clearest expressions of this. It is not unusual for neighbors or friends to drop in, sit together, and take part in a ritual that transforms ordinary moments into meaningful connection. In cities like Addis Ababa, the pace shifts, but the essence remains. Minibuses weave through crowded streets, markets pulse with energy, and modern life introduces new routines. Yet even here, tradition is never far. It appears in the food, in the language, in the quiet persistence of customs that continue to shape behavior. There is also a noticeable balance between endurance and adaptability. Limited infrastructure in some areas means that daily tasks fetching water, traveling long distances, accessing services can require time and effort. But these challenges are met with a kind of resilience that has been built over generations. Because in Ethiopia, daily life is not about convenience. It is about continuity, living each day in a way that remains connected to land, to people, and to a rhythm that has never been rushed. Food and cuisine, eating as a way of being. Food in Ethiopia isn't just something you consume. It's something you enter a shared space, a rhythm, a quiet conversation without words. At the center of it all is injera, a soft, spongy flatbread made from teff, slightly sour, almost alive in texture. It's not served on a plate. It is the plate. Stews, vegetables, and meats are laid directly on top, turning every meal into something tactile, immediate. You don't cut, you don't separate, you tear scoop, and feel your way through each bite. And then there's dorowat-rich, slow-cooked, deeply spiced. A dish that doesn't rush itself. Berbere spice builds heat gradually layered with onions cooked down until they almost disappear. It's bold but never careless. Like much of Ethiopia, it demands patience before it reveals its full character. But what makes Ethiopian cuisine truly different isn't just flavor, it's the way it's experienced. Meals are shared. Always. One large platter placed at the center, everyone gathered around it. There's no sense of ownership over portions. Instead, there's a quiet understanding this is for all of us. And sometimes it becomes even more personal through gursha, the act of feeding someone else by hand. It's intimate, disarming, and deeply human. Not a performance, but a gesture of trust. Religion also shapes what people eat and when. In the Ethiopian Orthodox tradition, fasting days are frequent, sometimes covering nearly half the year. During these periods, animal products are avoided entirely. What emerges instead is a surprisingly rich variety of plant-based dishes, lentils, chickpeas, spiced vegetables, layered complex, and anything but restrictive. It's not seen as limitation, it's discipline expressed through food. And then, of course, there's coffee, not as a quick drink, but as a ritual. Beans are roasted slowly over an open flame, their aroma filling the space before a single cup is poured. The brewing happens in a jabena, and the coffee is served in rounds, each one slightly different, slightly deeper. People sit, they wait, they talk. Time stretches. Nothing feels rushed. Because here, food doesn't exist to save time. It exists to give it meaning. Nature and wildlife isolation that created the extraordinary. If Ethiopia's landscapes feel otherworldly, it's because in many ways they are. For millions of years, this land has been rising, splitting, isolating itself from the rest of the continent. Mountains pushed upward. Valleys collapsed. The Great Rift carved its way through the earth like a scar that never healed. And in that isolation, life began to evolve differently. Ethiopia didn't just develop ecosystems. It created its own versions of them. High in the Bale Mountains, above the tree line, where the air thins and everything turns quiet, lives one of the rarest predators on Earth, the Ethiopian wolf. Slender, sharp, almost fox-like in appearance, it moves through the alpine grasslands with precision, hunting rodents in silence. Fewer than 500 remain in the wild. They survive not because the environment is easy, but because it is so specific a fragile balance of altitude, climate, and isolation that exists almost nowhere else on the planet. Further north, in the dramatic cliffs of the Simien Mountains, another species has made these extremes its home, the gelada baboon. Unlike any other primate, geladas don't hunt or scavenge. They graze. Moving in large social groups, they feed on grass like herds, their bright red chest patches exposed against the wind. Their lives are structured, complex, almost human in their social behavior. And yet they exist entirely within this narrow slice of Ethiopia, nowhere beyond it. Clinging to the same cliffs is the Walia ibex, a mountain goat found only in these highlands. With curved horns and an instinct for balance, it navigates vertical rock faces as if gravity were optional. Every step is survival. Every ledge a refuge. What ties all of these species together is not just rarity, but dependence. They are not simply adapted to Ethiopia, they are bound to it. Because Ethiopia's geography doesn't just support life, it limits it. The altitude, the temperature shifts the fragmented terrain, all of it creates natural barriers. Over time, these barriers turned regions into biological islands. Species evolved in isolation, cut off from wider ecosystems, becoming highly specialized and incredibly vulnerable. Even the vegetation reflects this uniqueness. In the Afro-alpine zones, giant lobelias rise like alien plants from the ground, storing water in thick stems to survive freezing nights and intense daytime sun. The landscape feels surreal, not lush, not barren, but something in between. A place that doesn't quite belong to the categories we expect. And then there's the silence. In many of these highland regions, the absence of human presence is striking. Not because people aren't part of the land they are, but because nature still holds dominance. There's a sense that these ecosystems are not curated, not controlled. They exist on their own terms. But that balance is delicate. Climate change, habitat loss, and human expansion are beginning to pressure these already fragile systems. When a species exists only in one place, any disruption becomes critical. Conservation efforts are growing, but the challenge is immense, protecting not just animals, but the environments that make them possible. Because in Ethiopia, wildlife is not just about diversity. It's about singularity. These are not creatures you can find elsewhere. Not alternatives, not variations, but originals. The result of a land that evolved in isolation, shaped by extremes, and left to become something entirely its own. And once something like that is lost, there is nowhere else to find it again. Challenges and reality. The weight of survival. For all its beauty, history, and resilience, Ethiopia is also a country shaped by struggle, not as a defining weakness, but as an undeniable reality. Because beyond the mountains, beyond the rituals, beyond the timeless identity, there is pressure. Constant, layered, and often invisible from the outside. One of the most persistent challenges is the land itself. Ethiopia's geography, while extraordinary, is also unforgiving. In regions like the Afar and Somali areas, drought is not an occasional crisis, it is a recurring cycle. Rainfall is unpredictable, sometimes absent for years. Crops fail. Livestock die. And for communities that depend almost entirely on agriculture and pastoralism, the margin between stability and survival is thin. Climate change is intensifying this instability. Seasons are shifting. Temperatures are rising. What was once a difficult environment is becoming even less predictable. And in a country where millions rely directly on the land, that unpredictability carries real consequences. Access to basic resources remains uneven. In many rural areas, clean water is not readily available. It must be collected often by women and children from distant sources, requiring hours of walking each day. Healthcare and education, while improving, are still limited in remote regions. Infrastructure from roads to electricity is expanding but not yet consistent across the country. Then there is the complexity of growth. In cities like Addis Ababa, development is visible. New buildings rise, businesses expand, and a sense of momentum is present. But that growth is not always evenly distributed. Alongside modern construction, informal settlements continue to expand. The contrast is sharp progress and poverty existing side by side, often within the same street. And beneath it all lies another layer: tension. Ethiopia is a nation of immense diversity ethnically, linguistically, and culturally. While this diversity is a source of richness, it has also at times led to conflict. Political instability and regional tensions have surfaced in recent years, reminding the world that unity in such a complex society requires constant effort. These conflicts are not simple and they are not new. They are tied to history, identity, governance, and the ongoing challenge of balancing local autonomy with national cohesion. But to view Ethiopia only through its challenges would be incomplete. Because what defines the country is not the presence of hardship, but the response to it. Resilience here is not a slogan. It is lived daily in ways that often go unnoticed. It is in the farmer who continues to plant despite uncertain rain. In the family that walks miles for water and still gathers for coffee in the evening. In the communities that rebuild, adapt, and move forward without losing their sense of identity. There is also change happening. Efforts to improve infrastructure, expand education, and strengthen the economy are ongoing. International partnerships, local initiatives, and a growing young population are all contributing to a sense that Ethiopia is not standing still, even if the path forward is complex. What makes Ethiopia's reality so powerful is the contrast. A country with one of the oldest civilizations in the world navigating some of the most modern challenges. A place where ancient traditions coexist with urgent needs. Where beauty and hardship are not opposites but companions. Because in Ethiopia, survival is not separate from life. It is part of it. And perhaps that is what makes its story not just compelling, but deeply human. Modern Ethiopia, between memory and momentum. Ethiopia today stands in a space that is neither fully past nor fully future, but something in between, constantly negotiating both. At the center of this transformation is Addis Ababa, the capital. It is not just a city, but a statement. Skyscrapers rise beside older concrete blocks. Construction cranes mark a skyline still in progress. Streets are alive with movement, minibuses, pedestrians, vendors, and the steady pulse of a city trying to catch up with its own ambition. Addis Ababa is also the diplomatic heart of Africa. It hosts the headquarters of the African Union, placing Ethiopia at the center of continental dialogue and decision-making. This role gives the country a voice that extends far beyond its borders, one rooted not only in politics, but in history. But modern Ethiopia is not defined by buildings alone. It is defined by its people, particularly its youth. With a median age under 20, Ethiopia is one of the youngest nations in the world. This generation is growing up in a reality very different from that of their parents. They are more connected, more exposed to global culture, and increasingly involved in shaping new ideas. Technology is slowly weaving its way into daily life, from mobile banking to emerging startup communities. Innovation exists even if infrastructure sometimes struggles to keep pace. And yet tradition has not been left behind. Walk through Addis Ababa and you will still find coffee ceremonies unfolding on sidewalks. Traditional clothing worn during holidays. Languages, customs, and rituals that remain deeply embedded in identity. Modern life does not erase these elements. It coexists with them, sometimes in harmony, sometimes in tension. That tension is where Ethiopia's future is being shaped. Economic growth has been significant in recent years with investments in infrastructure, manufacturing, and energy. Projects like railways and industrial parks signal a desire to integrate more fully into the global economy. But growth brings its own challenges: inequality, urban pressure, and the need for sustainable development. There is also a deeper question beneath it all. How do you move forward without losing what makes you unique? For Ethiopia, this is not theoretical. It is immediate. Every new building, every policy, every shift toward modernization carries with it a negotiation between preservation and progress. And yet there is something steady beneath the change. A sense that no matter how much evolves, the core identity of Ethiopia, shaped by its history, its land, and its people, remains intact. Because modern Ethiopia is not trying to become something else. It is trying to become more of what it already is.